had them foreclosed, or any number of things have happened to them that were completely outside of their control, and people have been suffering deeply. And then on top of that suffering that they have in their personal business life, they're paying more fees and taxes to the state, and they're paying more fees to their cities and their counties, and all those other things that we have out there. And they go to show up to their library because they're out of work and they got to go look for a job, so they go to use the computer at the library and the door's locked because the city can't keep the doors to their libraries open. So we identified all we have to do is really reduce our employee costs 10%, which is fairly reasonable. If we can reduce our employee costs by 10%, then we can bring our budget into balance. We don't have to lay people off, because we really don't want to lay people off. It's kind of like not feeding your kids. You love your kids, you want to feed them, you want to see them succeed, but maybe you're not going to feed them steak, you're going to feed them hamburger. You know, you got to figure out ways that you can do it. 10%, I believe anybody can absorb 10% in their budget. You should be able to absorb 10%. Well, what seemed like a very straightforward process became one of the most difficult, long, and cumbersome processes that I have seen. We started working with our unions and negotiating. We knew the date we had to have a budget. We knew that the last council meeting was the 22nd of June, and that we needed to have that budget passed by then. Yet we still had council members who refused to vote to push for these pay cuts. We had council members who refused to vote to impose contract terms. You all know we're a union state. Does that surprise anyone here? We're a union state. We have laws that govern how we have to negotiate, but the law is very clear. The law says that you must do whatever you can do in reasonably good faith to negotiate your contract, and if you cannot come to an agreement at the end, then you as the employer have the right to impose your last, best, and final offer. That is a standard procedure that's been around for years. Well, we had council members who say that doing that is a hostile act, and that we could not do that and burden our employees. We had council members who said that it was wrong to balance the budget on the backs of our employees, and that we should just cut services instead of imposing this terrible burden upon our employees. And several of us, 4 of us in particular, Pierre Luigi, Mayor Chuck Reed, Sam Licardo, and I, we stuck firm from the very beginning. 10% is 10%. 10% is reasonable, 10% is what we can do, but we had a difficult time. In fact, we had to call a special session of the council on the 29th, right before the end of the month, on the 29th, to pass the final budget, and we still had 3 council members that voted against that budget. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due. We had a number of our unions come together and come to the table with concessions. We basically said, you know, we barely have enough votes, but we got 6 votes. We are going to do this. And within the last couple of hours, they came to the table and brought concession packages that totaled 10%. The problem is it wasn't all the unions, but we got a number of the unions to do that, and we were able to save those jobs, and that was what we were able to use to balance our budget. And I'm happy to say that as of this morning, our police officers union ratified a contract terminology that will come to the council on August 3rd. When you guys are having your next meeting, we'll be voting on that. That brings concessions. I'll have to admit it's not 10%, but it's enough concessions to save every police officer job elimination and maintain the level of public safety services that we have today in our city next year. That's a big win. So I'll tell you, our police officers union, I'm a little biased. I think many of you know I'm a retired cop from the city of San Jose, and I used to be a union board member. So it hasn't always been warm and fuzzy fighting with these guys, but I got to say, they negotiated all the way along, and they've come to the table, and they realize that it's important. Over 75% of their membership ratified this vote, which is a good, strong showing by our police officers to say they're willing to do that to make sure that we have the services that we need for public safety. But we still got unions. Our firefighters won't do it. They're basically saying, lay off the young guys and close down the fire stations because you're not taking any money out of my paycheck. We have the librarians and the parks workers and all that. They're all represented by one big union, the MEF union, which is an AFSCME union. And they're saying, no, we're not giving a penny. In fact, we want the raise that you promised us, and that's just the way it's going to be. And hundreds of their employees are going to get laid off. And that means the libraries are going to close, and the community centers are going to close. They're not going to be open every day of the week, but we cannot get them to step up for those concessions. So what we need to do, and we need to really push for advocacy from people just like you and your neighbors, who are the ones who are paying the bill. And we need to say, this is what we want. We live in San Jose, or we live in the county, because as Sam said, what happens in California is immediately done in Washington. But what happens in San Jose ends up happening in Sacramento. What happens in San Jose, Cupertino, Saratoga, Milpitas, everyone else in the county is very quick to follow. So we need to keep stepping up the input and the advocacy for the residents. To kind of facilitate that, I created a website called SOSSJ. If you get a chance, check it out. I need to update it now that we've had these union concessions. But it stands for Save Our Services San Jose. SOSSJ.com or .org or .net, any of those, that'll get you to the right place. But what it was is a consumer, resident, taxpayer advocacy website where you can go and learn about the problem and say, I want to do something, how do I speak up? And it helps you learn how to effectively advocate in person, one-on-one in meetings with your council members or your legislative officials up in Sacramento, how to write effective letters, and most importantly, it's got a great email tool where you can write a message and you can email it instantly and fax it instantly to all of the council members, all of the administrative staff, and even more importantly, all of the union leadership for the 14 unions that represent city employees, because they need to hear that it's not just the mean Pete Constant, Pierluigi, Chuck Reed who are saying this, that it's the majority of our residents who are suffering out there saying, we need help. And we need to remind those at City Hall that city government exists for one basic reason, and that's to provide service to the people who live or work or own a business in that city. Now, to do that, we hire people because we're a service provider, and what better way to provide service than to have great employees like the employees in the city of San Jose provide a service to our residents. But there's a lot of people, unfortunately, I think a majority on the council, who have really lost sight of that, and they think that we exist to be an employer. And since we have all these people on the payroll, why don't we provide a few services along the way? And that's backwards. It's a subtle difference, but it's a difference we need to point out. And we need to keep pointing that out. Now I'll tell you, you may have read a little bit about this website in the paper, because some council members were pissed off that they were getting all these emails. Because in 6 weeks, over 10,000 emails were transmitted to council members, the mayor, and all these people. And that's what we need to do, keep your voice. We actually had a council member who wrote a letter to the editor saying that these emails were unsolicited, unwarranted, and a burden on them. Can you believe that? It's in the paper. Look it up. All you have to do is go to mercurynews.com and search for Nancy Pyle, and it'll jump right out there. You will see the letter from this council member. You can go to the Rules Committee videos that are online at the City of San Jose, and you can see her saying right on video that these emails from constituents are a burden and problematic because she forgot who she works for. These are the things, that's why we need your voice. That's why organizations like the Conservative Forum exist, so that we can get our message across who is whose boss. Which, by the way, my kids love to remind me that they are residents of District 1, so they can veto me. Now, we may not have a strong mayor system in San Jose, but in my house we have a strong father system, so I do have a veto. But we do need to remind these folks. I know Pierluigi knows it, I know it, I know the mayor knows it, and I think